Michael, please come up and speak to us. Thank
you. Thank you. Okay, now we all can. Thank you. And I really enjoy when I get calls from people like Lynn, who are running for probably more important jobs than the ones I go out so often to raise money for. Because in reality, we get caught up so often in presidential races, we get caught up in gubernatorial races, but those races that are more close to us are really the most important to us. And so that's why city council, supervisor, school board, mayors, those positions are so very important because they're the ones who are going to make the laws that we're going to be living under. I was talking to Paul Clark and Peter Clark tonight, who I've known for years, and of course, their father, Bill Clark. I used to refer to as the conscience of Ronald Reagan, because he truly was. There was a lot of people that worked with Ronald Reagan, for Ronald Reagan, but there was only one other conscience of Ronald Reagan, and that was Bill Clark. That was someone he could go to any time and know that whatever Bill Clark told him, it was not about any other agenda but goodness. And we were talking about my father and how he used to approach politics and approach people. And it was Bill who said, you know, when your father spoke, he spoke to us in parables. And so often today we have too many people speaking to us in sound bites. And I think many of us would like to get back to the parables, back to the stories. Because this state, this community itself, has so many great stories, great parables to tell the youth and to tell others in the community. I remember when this was a great state. I remember. And I remember growing up in the state of California. I remember we've always had droughts. But we used to have water in order to take care of the people in the state of California when we had those droughts. Because we had built enough dams to hold enough water for 16 million people. Well, we only had 12 million. Today we have 37 million, and we still only have dams for 16 million people. And I went a couple of blocks over and looked at the LA riverbed and see all that water going to the ocean because we haven't figured out a way yet to save it. That's idiotic. And the same thing is going to be happening up here. How much water this weekend is going to be going to the ocean instead of being saved for the future? I think about the farmer I met a couple of years ago. I was up in the Central Valley, and I was talking to a young farmer who had been in a food line. And it wasn't the food line that concerned him. It was the fact that in the food line, one of the staples of food he was getting carrots. Now, it seemed like a slap in the face to him because the reason he was in the food line was because he couldn't grow carrots because he didn't have water to grow carrots. But it didn't end there. It ended when he looked where the carrots were from. China? You're in a food line to eat carrots from China? Because you can't grow your own carrots. So, with Pope John Paul. It was a wonderful relationship. But that relationship was also put together by my good friend, Judge Bill Clark, that introduction. And it's interesting how my father took one of the worst times in his administration and turned it into something that was absolutely wonderful for the world. And I'm talking about the day he was shot. The day he was shot, March 30th, 1981, all of us were stunned. But yet he's the first president to ever survive an assassin's bullet. And my dad was the way you knew him is the way I knew him. He always made you feel at ease in his presence. Whether you were his son, his daughter, his wife, or just people he ran into on the street. In the room, here's my dad in bed in the hospital. Had a bullet an inch and a half from his heart. If the car turns to the left, it goes to the White House, he's dead. We're going to a funeral. If it turns right, goes to the hospital, he lives. Went to the right. And I looked at my dad laying there in bed. I said, good morning, Dad, how are you? He goes, well, good morning. I said, how are you doing? Well, you know, yesterday I was shot. I said, Dad, the world knows you were shot yesterday. Well, if you're ever going to get shot, don't be wearing a new suit. I said, what? Well, yesterday, you know, when I was shot, I was wearing a brand new blue suit. I said, yeah. Well, you think they let me undress? I am the President of the United States. You know, they put me on the gurney and they actually cut that suit off of me. And the last time I saw him was in the corner of the hospital room in shreds. So that's why I tell you, if you're ever going to get shot, don't be wearing a new suit. And I said, well, I'll tell Colleen to get the brown one out of the closet in case I'm ever going to get shot. Well, that young man who shot me, I said, yes, Higley. Yes, it was, yes, John Higley. I said, what? Well, I understand his parents in the oil business. Yeah? Well, I understand they live in Denver. Yeah? Well, do you think they have any money? I said, really? They live in Denver in the oil business? I hope to God they have some money. Well, do you think they'd ever buy me a new suit? A few months later, with the help of Bill Clark, my father would begin a relationship with Pope John Paul. When they got together in Rome, one Protestant, one Catholic, what do you think they had to talk about? Did it hurt? Hurt like hell? But they had a place to begin a conversation and build a relationship based on a shared experience. And we keep looking for perfect, instead of just looking for a person who can lead us, be our messenger, have a voice. And that can start right here. It starts at supervisor level, city council level, mayor's level, school levels. That's where we need to be, because those are the people closest to you. I hear so often people's... So my challenge to you tonight is, if you want to be like Ronald Reagan and follow some of his footsteps, what happens at these events so often is, we write them on the calendar, show up, we leave. Hey, Mike Reagan's well, met Lynn, met some other great people. Wasn't that great? Had a nice glass of wine, wonderful. You go home and it's over. Those working against us, it never ends. It never ends. To win, you have to work as hard the other direction every single day. You know, maybe Alec Baldwin said it best. I know you love this one. Walking out of a gym with Alec Baldwin a couple of years ago, I went up to Alec and I said, Mr. Baldwin, my name is Mike Reagan. Jane Wyman's my mother. And he looked at me. I said, well, I could have told you Ronald Reagan was my father in Duck, or tell you Jane Wyman was my mother in Space Lady. He said, you know, you're the only one that can never do that. I said, I know that. And he said, I'm so glad you stopped me. I said, why? He said, because I was having some friends over for dinner the other night, and I was telling them this, and I want to share this. I want you to share this with your family. I miss your father. I said, you miss my father? You voted against him every time you had a chance. You disagree with him on every issue. He said, yes. But I have come to realize in the recent past, your father had a good soul. And what the world today is missing is that soul. So I say to you, fill out your paper, start your time capsule, and let's find our soul again and start winning again. And let's start right here in this county. And let's win one for the Gipper with her.